Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of, you guessed it, the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner. I'm the producer of the show. We're certainly happy to have you here with us today. We've got a really interesting guest, Bari Tessler Linden. She's a financial therapist, mentor coach. She calls herself a Mama-preneur, and she's the founder of The Art of Money. She's guided thousands of people to new, empowered, and refreshingly honest relationships with money through her nurturing and, get this, body-centered approach. Really cool. So every year, 500 plus students from around the globe go through her year-long Art of Money program, and her work has been featured on Oprah.com, Inc.com, Huffington Post, U.S. News and World Report, Fiscal Times, USA Today, NerdWallet, Simple Dollar, Redbook Magazine, on and on and on. She's the author of The Art of Money, a life-changing guide to financial happiness. So, really interesting guest today. Before I turn it over to Ian, I want to remind you about his new course, True You, which is about to drop, but you can go get on the wait list at typologyinstitute.com right now. And the unique thing about this is Ian covers instincts, subtypes, passion, basic fears and desires, virtues, and then what I think we're all after, the path to transformation. I know just even through the process of him building this course, I've turned a major corner in my understanding of the Enneagram and its impact on me. So I hope you check that out. You can go get on the wait list at typologyinstitute.com. And without any further ado, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Hey, Bari, welcome to Typology.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
So I am fascinated by you already. I get show notes from different people and I'm like, wow, this is going to be really interesting. So there's a couple of reasons why. We are both fours with three wings. We both work, we're both right. We are both in the coaching consulting space, right? I do a lot of corporate consulting. And we're both therapists. And I have spent an incredible amount of time in Boulder, Colorado. I can tell you all of my favorite restaurants in Boulder. If I want to go for breakfast, I have to go to Snooze. I guess Frasca would be another one. I'm trying to think of where else. Oak would be another one. You all have like these single name restaurants there, you know.
We do Salt's Pasta,
Corrida,
Mateo. I can go on and on. Yeah.
Right, Corrida is another one. My daughter went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, so I have spent a lot of time there. So we have a lot we could share in common. Okay, it's going to be fantastic. How did you first learn about the Enneagram?
So I was in my 20s in graduate school to become a somatic psychotherapist at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. And some point in my studies, I had a therapist that told me about the Enneagram. And she, I think, also told me what she thought my type was, which I don't think you should do. I think you really need to let the person come up with their own typing. So that was one of the first moments when I heard about it. And I think I went right to the Wisdom of the Enneagram, the book by Wiseau and Hudson.
Right. And what was your response when you found out you were a 4 with a 3?
A few responses. One was I wanted to go screaming, running away. And, never look back like, and it was pretty clear, in your 20s, you're really in your stuff. So I was really in family history and dynamics and trying to unravel all of that and, doing my own work so that I could one day become a good therapist to hold space for others. It just, so when I first saw it, it felt like the inside of me was turned inside out. And I could see myself, but I was also, wanted to go screaming, running away from it. And so while pretty quickly I knew that I was a 4, I don't know if I knew about my wing at that time. And then there definitely was some confusion in my 30s as I became an entrepreneur, was growing my business, and, had so much energy and time, and was, growing my business around the clock. So everyone around me kept throwing at me, you're a 3, you're a 3, you're a 3. And so there was some deeper exploration there. But at some point I remember very clearly, it's not like you know what you are and then you're okay with it and set with it. It was, I saw what I was a 4. And then there was this whole journey in my 30s where it maybe looked different for outsiders. I was getting a lot of different feedback. But when I really went deep, over and over again, I came back to, no, I am indeed a 4. I have a very strong 3 wing, but I am indeed a 4. That is how I operate. Everything is created from that place.
Yeah, we're again very similar. I am a 4 with a very strong 3 wing, although as I get older, more and more that 5 seems to be abundantly present in my life. And as I've been telling people in the last years that wings are not static. You know what I mean? Like the system is so fluid and dynamic that we can make choices. We can make conscious choices. Like, I got to write a book, man. So I got to really lean into the resources and the energy and the traits of that 5 side of me. Or in the middle of releasing a new course, and I got to turn it on. So I've really got to lean on to my 3 side and draw from its resources and strengths, So, I don't like to think of wings as something that are static and stuck, but something that, as I oftentimes tell people, you never see a bird flying around with 1 wing. And so, you're not going to see anyone flying around with just 1 wing either,
True. And I can remember early on, I was in libraries a lot, and those card catalogs,
oh yeah,
were very exciting for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have an inner librarian, and behind me is my husband's library of books. It's a 5 library. Mine is upstairs. But so and when I've had to write my book or when I create content, I go way into the 5, and certainly as I hit 50 last year, so I'm about to hit 52. 5, the 5 wing is coming up in a stronger way.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's remind people just for a minute what a 4 with a 3 wing is like. We are very perfectionistic. We have probably more than other type a very strong 1 side. When we see something that we envy, we tend to go after it, right? Versus a 4 with a 5 that it tends to be more introverted than a 4 with a 3 wing. We're more aggressive than a 4 with a 5. So if we see something that we envy, it's like, I'm actually going to go and get it, right? We are a little bit more image conscious than 4s with 5s, actually quite a bit more. As you know, being married to a 5, 5s are virtually have very little image consciousness unless they have a 4 wing.
And my husband does, so yeah.
So there's a little bit, okay. So he picks out his bike riding clothes a little bit more carefully than the average 5 with a 6 wing, right? Sure. We express creativity just for its own sake, but we like to be recognized. We like to be successful. We like to be recognized for being successful. And here's the downside of you and I is that we can be pretty elitist. And sometimes when we're not very self-aware, we can think of ourselves as being kind of superior to other people. It's the side of that 4 with a 3 wing that's our desire for specialness becomes a little inflated compared to, I think, the 4 with a 5, which is a little quirkier, and earthy than the 4 with a 3 wing. So that's for our folks who are listening who are unfamiliar with that type combination or wing type combination. I want to know what a financial therapist is. You are the author of The Art of Money, a life-changing guide to financial happiness. I love this. I wish I had a business card with financial therapist on it, even though I'm not one, but because this sounds so dang cool.
Yeah.
What is a financial therapist?
So I love saying it too, because it stops people in their tracks. When people say, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm a financial therapist." And they pause and they immediately say, "Oh, I need that," or "My brother needs that," or "My sister," or "My mother," or "My daughter," right? So I created my version of a financial therapy method or methodology in 2001. And my husband, 5, right? He came up with that word. He came up with that title. He's come up with all the titles. So when, originally I trained as a somatic therapist, I thought my work would be around body and food and sexuality and sensuality and grief and death. Those were my topics.
Such 4 topics. That is so 4. It's unbelievable.
That sounds great. Like, that's what I thought I'd be doing and working with couples. And when that school loan for me came due, it was just a huge epiphany moment of, what is my relationship to money? Do I have one? Do I have a healthy one? Do I have a conscious one? Wait a second. When we were training to become therapists, did we have any money conversations, any teachings on how to work with couples around their dynamics, how to help them have better communication with each other, get on the same team? It just was so mind-blowing to me that we did not. My entire graduate program got me through with no conversations or teachings around money. And so when that student loan came due, it was an epiphany moment. I realized, this is crazy. I'm either gonna go, again, screaming, running, there we go again, and just travel and never look back. I thought about it. I like to present myself with options, but I knew pretty clearly I was gonna take this topic on, like I did every other big topic. And I started learning everything I could about money. And I started with bookkeeping first. Doing my own bookkeeping, then doing bookkeeping for other therapists and coaches and artists. And they had no idea I had a master's in psychology. They just threw their books at me. They wanted to have nothing. They did not want to have anything to do with it. And so I always say, this is the age of 28 when my student loan came due to 32. I learned more about people's relationship to money, their habits, spending patterns, their values, what's important to them by doing their bookkeeping. I saw everything. And at some point at the age of 32, it was time to integrate my past training as a psychotherapist with bookkeeping, the language of money, all these basic tools and systems and strategies that I was learning and falling in love with, and really surprised the hell out of myself. I was reading QuickBooks manuals before bed. My husband, knew me as a dancer, a therapist, a 4, going, what, what's happening to my wife? So in 2001, I had a mentor who said, it's time for you to give a talk on your methodology. And I said, what are you talking about? And I like to work with one person or a couple, not groups of people. She said, young lady, it's time for you. And so I went on a long walk in the woods and said, what am I supposed to bring back to my community? What are the concepts? What are the phases? How can I help people become more, to create a healthy, creative, meaningful, savvy relationship with money? Because I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll explain what it is that I really thought in that epiphany moment, I was the only one who had money issues, or I was the only one who did not receive a financial education from grade school and up. And pretty quickly I realized it's people from all different lineage, ethnicity, economic background. Most of us did not receive a full financial education, right? Pieces of it. So we did not receive a financial education and an emotional literacy education. So right. Financial therapy for me brings together financial literacy and emotional literacy. And step 1 for me was bringing all the somatic tools, because
now you're going to need to explain somatics. I know what they are, but just for our folks to understand what somatic means.
Body. It just means body-centered. It's that our mind and body are connected. One little example of this is that, you know, at 16, I asked my parents if I could go to therapy. I wanted to understand myself better. They sent me to a male therapist and a talk therapist. It was a good first step, but both of those weren't going to work in the long run. I really needed to be working with a woman, and I needed to work with someone who could ask me what's happening in your body, what emotions are coming up. And so for me, that was what led me to graduate school, is that it was so hard to be in my body, and yet I had so many huge emotions as a 4, you know, huge emotions. So, right, I would go into my room as a teenager, shut the door, blast music. When I was done dancing every single emotion, I could come out of my room and then articulate what was going on to myself, to my parents. And that's what led me to graduate school, was to understand how to be with, name, sit with, feel, move all the huge emotions that were coming up for me. So that's all. Somatic psychology works. You know, we do talk therapy, but we also are asking, like, what's going on in your body? What are you feeling? What are the sensations? Where's your breathing? And so in 2001, when it was time for me to integrate my past training as a psychotherapist with all these, the bookkeeping and money management, you know, systems, step 1 for me was helping people understand what are the money emotions that come up. So is it shame, anger, sadness, grief, anxiety, fear, guilt, hope, excitement, you know, and not only just what are they, but tools to name them, sit with them, learn how to be with them. So it's not so overwhelming, or we don't ignore them. And so step 1 for me was a body check-in. That was the very first part of my methodology, was step 1, what do you do? Is learn how to check in with your body and understand what the money emotions are that are coming up, and give you a little practice that you could do every day, not one and done, right? The body check-in is something you do every day during all the daily money interactions or conversations. So that was step 1, but the methodology that I created has 3 phases, and it integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps. And so it's holistic. It gets to all the emotions and the deeper money healing work, and what's your money story, and what did you learn from family, and what needs to be forgiven, all that deeper stuff. But then we have 2 phases that are very practical. So sometimes people will read my book, or they'll say, oh, she just works on the emotions or psychology. And I say, no, I love the practical. When I first learned bookkeeping, it was mind blown. It was, I'm not good at math, so I can't have a healthy relationship to money. If I'm not good at math, I could never learn a bookkeeping system. So when someone sat me down as I was working as a counselor in the mental health field and showed me how to use Quicken and Excel in this little back room for 5 hours a week, it was the most thrilling thing. And, you know, and it allowed me to see, instead of throwing away my bank statements, which I did in graduate school, I can actually learn what my numbers are. I could actually learn how to navigate a bookkeeping system.
Right.
That's what gets into the money practices, which is all about really understanding what your numbers are, understanding what cash flow is, learning how to do budgeting. And I have added in all of these creative, of course, deeper meaning, of course, more playful, of course, tools and strategies to how I teach people to have a healthy relationship to money. And so they're filled throughout the whole thing. But the basic framework of my financial therapy methodology includes body check-ins and somatic tools of how to work with your emotions, and then this 3-phase methodology of money healing, money practices, and money maps.
Well, I think this is really fantastic, because, you know, we took the word money probably crosses our lips at least 5 times a day, right? We don't get much of an education about money growing up. And as you said, what's interesting to me is we don't have any classes on personality when we're little people. Like, there are different types of people.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And given the fact that most of our conflicts in life are around personality misunderstandings or conflict, that seems weird to me, right? It seems obvious that we should have some conversations with little people about it. Anyway, One of the questions someone once asked me that stopped me in my tracks, given that we talk about money, we obsess about it, we think about it, we feel about it, etc., was someone just said to me one day, Ian, addressing me specifically, what do you think money is for? And I remember going, what? I mean, it's one of those questions that was like, yeah, what's the purpose of money?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, that's very strange, given how much we think about money. I have no idea how to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's it for?
Mm-hmm.
So can you in brief just say, like, from your perspective now, and again, looking through the lens of the Enneagram and a 4, like, what's money for?
So I might have to back up for a moment and say, I already told you the topics that I thought I'd be teaching on and working with people on. I never imagined money would be the doorway to help people have more mindfulness in day-to-day living, to help them understand their values and be able to express them more in their life. Money for me is a tool, and it can be used in beautiful, positive ways, and it can be used in evil ways. I never use that word, evil.
It's not a bad word in this context, I don't think.
Well, because one of the things that a lot of people say is money is the root of all evil. When I look at what are the money sayings or beliefs that you grew up with, and that's something that still comes up all the time. So for me, money is a really significant area of life. I call it a garden. So it's one of those big areas that needs our attention and time and care. So I'm approaching it more from the micro place than the macro side, which at this point in my career, I'm almost 20 years in to the financial therapy. The decade before was the training as a therapist. So I have to do a lot of work on the macro side as well. So for me, really, it just is one of the big doorways that I go through with people to help them understand what's important to them, what's meaningful to them, how do they know their value and their worth, because for most of us, we have to create a livelihood, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I think that it's a question that I pose to everyone. I say, what does money mean to you? What does having a healthy relationship mean to you? What does becoming an adult around money mean to you? Because so many students come to me and say, I still feel like a teenager around money, and I'm in the rebellion phase, or I still feel like a toddler. So it's one of those places that, as we said, it's not taught. And I love how I said financial literacy and emotional literacy wasn't taught. And you said, and also our personalities. Like that's a third thing. That's their life skills that are essential. And so for me, money is a life skill that needs to be understood on a very practical level and a very emotional and psychological level.
Yeah. So I want to, because our show is so Enneagram centric, I want to talk about personality types and money, right?
We all have strengths and we all have challenges. So there's no one way. As you said, there's no cookie cutter. Each type is going to have their own strengths around money and their own challenges around money. And they need to know themselves really well in this area. Now, I've been waiting for an Enneagram expert for years to come up with their thoughts on each type and money. And years ago, I did bring in an Enneagram expert who I would bring into my program, and I would interview him. But he wasn't an expert on money per se. He was an expert on the Enneagram. So we could talk about each of the different types and their strengths and challenges. But then I also think within that, we're also unique. And we all have our different things, again, based on our childhood, our family of origin, our ethnicity, our economic status, our lineage, where we grew, our religion, where we grew up in the world. So there's all of that as well. So which is all part of personality, right?
So, maybe we can talk about types and their relationship with money. Would that be a fun thing to do?
Sure, we can try it.
Yeah.
We can try it. Sure.
Well, what was your hesitation?
No, because I mean, I know the Enneagram well and have been dabbling in it for years. Let's see what we can come up with.
All right. Well, then, add, subtract. We can sort of see how it goes, right? So let's talk first about the improvers. So they used to be called the perfectionists, but I call them the improvers. I think it's a better way of speaking about their superpower, really. I would say that in terms of habits, right? This is a strength. I think that by nature, most improvers are pretty financially responsible. Like, I've rarely met an improver that had a lot of debt, or that didn't pay their bills on time, or weren't very responsible, thinking about how do I live appropriately and in a conscientious and self-disciplined relationship with money, which is a good thing, right? So they were good monitors of what stuff was. They were great mentors to others who wanted to do the same. The downside was, or the challenges were that they could become miserly if they weren't careful. Like, frugality could take over, and they could be hyper scrupulous around money. And they needed a line item for fun.
Right. Which is something that I suggest a lot for all different Enneagram types, but probably especially we're talking about number one, right? We're talking about
the perfectionist,
yeah.
So I love that. Again, the strength and challenge that each type has, and I know I'm speaking in big broad generalities, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. And we can talk in generalizations, right, for each of these types, right? And then again, each person has to really dive in. I do think with ones that, for the most part, now if someone veers off, I don't want someone to feel bad, because money is a tough topic. And again, so many people have so much shame, or they look around and they feel like everyone else learned about money, but I didn't. Or if I grew up in that family, if I had more money, I would have, right? So I don't want, but that's normal stuff. If you have any shame or have emotions coming up as we're talking about this, just do a little body check-in, take some notes, get curious. For me, they're a bit more vigilant, right? They're a bit more hyper vigilant. And I think they would have a bookkeeping system in place or some tracking system in place that they would know well, and be very upset with themselves if they weren't keeping track all the time and knowing what their numbers were. And they might be looking too closely, right? They may need to back off a little bit. They may need to add in a fun category or play category, frivolous category, unknown, category.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And the last thing about being frugal, you would think, like, what's the matter with that? I grew up with one parent who spent a lot and one parent, my mom, who was more frugal. But then she had those places where she would spend. She's generous in gifts, or when she would go visit my brother in Europe, she would pay for the nice seats because, upgrade. And that's a lot of money, to upgrade those seats. She was very frugal. She liked her Folgers coffee, right? So, and my mom's probably has a one wing. She's a 2 with a one wing. So with frugal, I've known so many people that they found out their parents who would buy instant milk or wouldn't even sometimes pay for extra electricity, or they always were like, turn off the lights. And when they passed, they learned that parent had so much money. And they just never knew how to enjoy it. So you can be too frugal.
It's interesting.
There's an extreme thing. Yeah,
it's interesting you should say that. In my experience, lots of people who you just described are 5s.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. 5s tend to be minimalists, and they, we always laugh and say that 5s typically don't win beauty contests. You know what I mean? Because they're just happy to wear 10-year-old pants. They don't, it's like, they're all about conserving energy and wanting to be independent and self-sufficient and self-contained. So for them, it's not about, we say their passion is avarice, but it's not greed in the traditional sense of the word. It has to do with retentiveness. They want to retain what little they think they have, right? So you hear a lot about these 5s who live in sort of squalid conditions, and then they die and leave $5 million to build a library at their alma mater.
Interesting.
So there is that kind of 5 qualities of the person you were like. They research when they're going to buy something. They research it to death. They'll collect coupons. They'll reward cards, airline miles. They're just always checking these things out. And again, they'll spend money on these sort of niche areas that they have interest in. Like, I bet if your husband's really into biking, he spent a lot of money on that bike.
Well, see, that's the thing. You're describing my husband, but you're not. And so I think it depends so much on the wings, right? Because when I met my husband 20 years ago, he had just come out of living in a teepee up high altitude in the mountains, with hardly any possessions, and had basically decided to live off the grid, so
right.
That's where I found him. And
that's
then
a 5, man. That is so fun.
But I brought him into culture and society, as he says, and it took him a while to find his own work and his own livelihood. And that was always his question, like, what's the purpose of life? But my God, does he know how to spend money on his dreams? So yeah, he would love to spend, if he could, he would have multiple bikes, which he doesn't. Or, he has a lot of dreams that he's had since he was a kid, which I think are very 4 related.
I was going to say, it sounds like he has a 4 wing.
He wanted an electric car since he was a kid. And he has an electric car. That was a big gift he gave to himself last year. So, yeah.
That 4 wing, can create a lot of what you're describing. The 5 with the 6 wing would have more anxiety than the 5 with the 4. The aesthetics would really matter to him around the bikes and they're being beautiful and and all of that sort of side of things. So let's talk about 4s for a second, because we're both 4s, and I can talk a little bit about my own relationship with money. I had a lot of I grew up in a home where we had a tremendous amount of money, followed by absolutely no money. You know what I mean? Like, my father went from being a tremendously successful film producer and executive to someone who drank us into a hole, right? And for me, as a 4, I bring that history, right? So that's a piece of it. But being special, unique, and original doesn't come cheap. You know what I mean? Like generally speaking, unless you want to go cheap on the consignments, if you want to be special on the consignment shop side, which was never my thing, it was like, no, I don't want to print. I want the original pencil signed, or I don't want a $500 Takamine to get guitar. I want a $4,000 Collings. It's like to have beautiful things cost a lot of money. And I could be, at the same time, even though I would spend a great deal of money on certain things that I love, I'd also have anxiety about it. And I had some shame, because I'm a 4. Shame comes naturally to me, about how I would be around money. And when I got under stress and went to the low side of 1, I would become very panicked and anxious and organized. And I'll tell you, and what saved my life was getting a business manager who absolutely takes care of all of our personal and professional stuff, right? Yeah. Not everyone can do that, but that's basically what saved our lives.
Yeah.
How about you as a 4, like your relationship with money?
Very different than you. So, and I think this goes back to what we're already talking about. In my family, I grew up middle class, but I grew up with entrepreneurs. So my family was in real estate a bit. They also owned some of the first gay bars in Chicago with my uncles who were gay. And so there was that. There was also, my father was very intense. He was a very intense businessman. And so there was a lot of verbal sparring for me with him, and I had to individuate against him, right? My mother was very frugal. So my dad was more the spender, but more on techie electronics and stuff, or travel. My mother, her clothes were like as simple as you could get, like simple cotton clothes. So I love consignment store clothes. I love them. That's kind of changed over the years, but especially now I'm not going into consignment store clothes. I'm just, buying stuff online, or I stopped. for many months. So there's that. What do I want to say? For me, I was very confused about work and career and how I was going to create something that I loved and that was eventually lucrative. With a master's degree in psychology at first, working in the mental health field, I was making $11 an hour.
Right, yeah.
I remember that so well, and I didn't see any options out there, but I wanted body work. I wanted some self-care. I wanted really good chocolate to bring to potluck dinners. I wanted to show up with a basket of chocolate. And so those led me into, how am I going to make more money? But it can't be like my father. It has to be in integrity. It has to be deeply aligned with my
authentic.
Authentic. It has to be so incredibly creative, and so
Yes.
I was never someone who said, I remember getting past six figures and that was exciting, but it was never like I have to have $1 million business. I always mapped everything out and I fell in love with those numbers. So I did my own bookkeeping for 10 years plus. And it was such a ritual for me. I made it a ritual. I made it the sacred practice. And to know where I was clearly instead of pretending, guessing, doing this whole dance was incredibly empowering for me,
Yeah.
So I would map out my numbers all the time and I would say, this is a life and lifestyle and where I want to donate and, where I want to spend money. But it was never like, it has to be this $1 million+ business. It was always about, how do I integrate money, time, energy, family, and health together? That's always my equation. So
yeah, I think that maybe one of the things for me as a 4, and this may be, I think, again, these are generalities. When we talk about personality, we're talking about probabilities, not predictions, right? So it's probable that some 4s or many 4s find that they make emotional decisions about they need to sort of suspend emotions, not suspend, they need to sort of balance their emotional relationship with money with critical thinking.
Totally.
So
totally.
kind of like going, I just got to bring these into balance because I can't just keep spending based on my feelings,
Well, and so I really feel like we have to first have the space and time to explore what those emotions are and how deep they run and feel them and deal with them. And that's, I say Naropa, my graduate school program saved me. It's what got me through my 20s, to step into the rest of my life in a healthy way for myself and for others, and to be a parent. Right. I became a parent right before my 40th birthday. So we need that space first. And then we can go into like, what are the practical tools? What are the questions? And also not take ourselves so seriously all the time. And yeah, I still check in with my body. What's the emotion? But then I also ask, do I have the cash flow for this? Is this in line with my values? What are my larger goals here? And so I never leave out the emotions, but back in the day, it was like the emotions ran the show and, they ran and led everything until us as 4s have to really learn. Yes, they're so important, significant, and meaningful. But in some moments, we just can't take them that seriously and we have to balance it out with other parts. Yeah.
Well, let's go to another, we probably won't be able to get through all 9 types, but we can talk about some type from each of the centers, right? So we've spoken about 1s who are in the body sort of anger triad. We've spoken about a little bit about your mom who's a 2, 4s are in the hard triad. We've mentioned your husband, the 5, a little bit, but it might be fun just talking about 7s, the enthusiasts.
Yeah, but let's can we go to 2s just for 1 second? And
yeah, sure.
I mean, 2s have a really hard time with overgiving. That's,
overgiving is a big deal.
Really, really watch that, like overgiving and then expecting others to do the same or be compensated in some way. And they can get really upset with that. And so, yes, they're generous, but they can be generous to a fault, just like you can be frugal to a fault.
Right.
That's something
Totally. I actually have a story about that. I know a woman who she was a retired school teacher and a 2 with a 2 wing, and she
wait, a 2 with 2 wing? Wait.
Well, that's a joke. It just means that she was so 2, she didn't even have a wing.
Got it. I was like, wait.
So she her daughter came to her one day and just in a conversation happened to say, oh, my husband, we bought a house that was too expensive and we're going underwater, and it's sad, but we have to sell it and get something smaller and get a mortgage that's a little bit, more aligned with what we actually make for a living, And I think, gee, if mom had been sort of self-aware, she'd have said, boy, that sounds like it's a real drag. I'm sorry to hear it, but it sounds like a responsible thing to do, like to get out of this anxious, terrible space where you can't, every month is like, come the 29th, you're a mess, right? But instead, mom, the not very self-aware too, shows up at their door one day with a $250,000 check. She had raided her 401k to get a $250,000 check. And she shows up like so excited on the front door, like, and she had a plan. Oh, she had a plan. The plan was, you can pay me back without interest this much a month over the next, 140 years, And the daughter had been through a lot of therapy and knew the Enneagram and knew mom. Yeah. So she was smart enough to go, this smells bad.
Right. Which is a good response. I don't know how mom reacted, but
yeah. Well, mom, she didn't say it to mom, but she did decline, because she knew
she not accept that gift.
Yeah, because she knew that mom, in return, unconsciously wanted love, appreciation, attention, approval, and this thing had a lot of strings attached.
Yep.
Exactly. What do you think about threes? Because people with threes and money, the achievers, people have some misconceptions about threes and money too. Not just there's sort of a stereotype about threes with money, isn't there?
Is that they're just extremely successful and
I think the stereotype is they all want to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And I think that's absolutely wrong. I think it's context based. So if you grew up in a family in the mafia, if you were a three, you would want to be the Don.
Right.
Or so it's not necessarily, but they do like outward expressions or signals that they're successful. Yeah. Which is why sometimes people always think, oh, they want to get rich so they can buy a Ferrari and a big house and blah, blah, blah. And because they're so afraid of failure, right? They're chasing, money seems to be the most obvious signal of success, but there are other ways of expressing it too in different milieus. That said, what do you think about three relationships with money in your experience?
Well, there's a few different layers of here. There's what do we do with our work, our relationship to achievement, ambition, success, and then how do we spend money? Or, money's like one little piece in that whole puzzle, right?
Right.
And so, the threes that I've worked with, they have big ambition for themselves. And in different life phases, they may need to really take a check and slow down. And that's incredibly hard for them. But sometimes that's what I have to work with them about. A lot of threes do know how to make a lot of money. They don't always plan it well, though. They don't always invest it or save it. Or I've had some threes where they still were in debt. Even though they're making tons of money, they just weren't looking. They weren't looking. Yeah. But I see that anyway. So that's sevens also are terrified to look at and have bookkeeping systems and look. So we'll talk about them.
Yeah. So but those threes, that three thing is really important because I actually worked with, I lived in Greenwich, Connecticut. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut and didn't leave there. I worked there for many years. So I was working with a hedge fund manager who was living in the wealthiest neighborhood in Greenwich, which is saying something, overlooking Long Island Sound with a view of the skyline of Manhattan. He was 35 years old. And we went for a walk one day and he said, I'm terrified. And I said, well, why? And he said, because we are living paycheck to paycheck. He says, I have three kids two in boarding school, one in a private day school. My mortgage is like $18,000 a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you make multiple seven figures and you are living month to month, multiple country clubs, multiple car leases, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it never occurred to me that might be the case. So you're right. They can be very irresponsible and out of control with money.
Well, just so image focused and outward success focused that it's hard for them to really slow down and get deep inside and say, really, what do they want and what's
Right.
important to them and what are they willing to give up now so they can have this other thing, but also so that they can, you know, get themselves through a transition or do things different or, you know, so, or slow down. And yeah, but they're incredible achievers and they're very
Yeah.
successful and they, you know, and, you know, I have a Capricorn in me, so I love going after a goal. I'm slower about it, more slower and steady. I don't like fast pace, quantum leap. And threes like quantum leaping, fast leaping. They really love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that question that we opened with is a good question for fours because the self-reflection for 3s, 7s, and 8s doesn't come naturally. For you and I, it comes too naturally at one level. It's like we can become so introspective and self-reflective that we just get lost in a morass, of, you know, our imaginations running wild in a million different directions. But the question for a 3 to ask them to sort of frame out a philosophy of money where it's like, okay, let's move beyond accumulation and just start to talk about what is your philosophy around money. You know what I mean? In other words, can you articulate an answer to the question of what's money for? Going back to that, so that they can really begin to think rather than accumulate and spend for unconscious reasons that are unhealthy.
So let me tell a short story about that. I don't know if Janine Roth, the food expert who then wrote a book called Lost and Found. Do you know her story? She
No.
might be more of a 1, but she might be a 3 because she's pretty strong in her marketing and ambition and where she's taken her work over the years. But her motivating goal was security. And so she saved like crazy, millions of dollars. That was her number one goal from her childhood, right? Something about her father. Again, I don't know what her personality type is, if it's a 1 or a 3. And she got a phone call one day that, all her money with Bernie Madoff was
Oh
gone,
boy.
or most of their money was gone in one fell swoop, in one moment. And so, her goal was security. And so in that, she had to completely reevaluate what true security and safety really means to her. And is it a dollar amount? And is it a retirement amount? And she wrote a whole book, Lost and Found, and had to find, she had to reevaluate all of that and come up with a different way to find safety and security that wasn't about the numbers. And then she did go back to investing. She's a really good investor. So, and saver. She's a really good saver. So maybe she could be a 6, and
She could be a 6.
She could be a 6, right? And she just really needs that, and that's a security blanket for her. But because she lost so much, she had to reevaluate and ask all these new questions and find how to access safety and security in different ways.
Right.
And realize it's yeah.
So she could also be what's called a self-preservation 3.
Okay.
So the self-preservation 3 tends to acquire possessions, money, saving for purposes of security, not for purposes of recognition and status.
Right.
So, again, this is why I'm always telling people it's so important to my listeners that learning subtypes is important, because self-preservation 3s often get confused with 6s.
Okay.
And so there's actually a 3. Most people's idea of a 3 is what's called a social 3. And they're kind of they're the 3est of the 3s. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what everyone thinks of when they think of 3s. But there's 2 other types of 3s. And one being the self-pres 3, which is much more concerned around security and accumulation.
Yeah. Yeah, my study stopped at the social, self-preservation, sexual subtypes, even though I hear about it and I read about it a little bit.
Yeah, they're so helpful.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because oftentimes people get led down these rabbit holes based on just pure type, and there's no such thing as a pure type. There's a wing, there's a subtype, there's all this other stuff going on. But we can't leave 6s out, can we?
Let's talk about 6s, but then we're gonna have to talk about 7s and 8s and 9s.
That's okay. Why not? We can kind of like, how about we'll just do a fast run? How's that?
Sounds good. Okay, 6.
Talk about 6s, the loyalists. What do you think? Because their thing is all about safety and security.
Yeah, and anxiety and managing their anxieties. I've seen both very frugal 6s, but I've also seen anxiety spending as well, and just plowing through inheritance because they don't really think that there's a future. So I've seen that. Yeah, I was with a 6 before my husband. That was over 20 years ago, and I've kind of blocked that out. I've blocked it out. So I don't know. You tell me. What do you think are positive?
Well, yeah. So I think, like improvers, they're risk averse, right? So they'd probably be traditional investors, mutual funds. They're probably not going to mess around with stocks. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to be
unless they research it like heck. And so they research investment options, just like they research when to buy. So you said that was a 5 thing, but the 6 I was with did that like crazy, and maybe he had a 5 wing.
Maybe a very strong 5 wing, or it was driven by security needs, right? Like I need to know everything. So it could be a whole different motivation. I think their mantra sometimes is failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So it's like there's always an emergency fund. Or usually there's an emergency fund. And they're chronic worriers, right? So this is the downside, right? On the upside, when they're really healthy, I think they actually hold money with the proper, they don't have an arthritic grip on it, nor do they just cast caution to the wind. There's 2 subtypes that are worth mentioning in 6s. One is, you have a phobic subtype, which would be they're very in touch with their fear. And so they know they're fearful. But there's this counterphobic 6, which is the counter type, who doesn't know they're afraid and might be fearless. If they were afraid of money, they would act fearless around it, not fearful. They would rather rebel than submit, versus the phobic who would rather submit than rebel. So they would be much more probably defiant around money than the phobic 6.
So I think my financial planner is a 6, and he plans everything out meticulously. And they live in California, so they've had to evacuate last year. They almost had to this year. Bags are packed, everything's in place. He's also able to, he's a great investor. He's able to think about every single possible scenario, good and bad, and has it all planned out. He's a great financial planner, and he's a great thinker. He was really into permaculture for years, and has taken like every single first aid emergency class, and had his child and wife doing it too. And they, it's the positive is that, and then he meditates. So we add that in, and there's a lot of resiliency. And so, everything's planned out, every single option. I'm like, aren't you freaking out? And he's like, well, I already have weighed every single option out there, and he's considered everything. So, yeah.
I think that's really wise. I mean, I think every type, if they were a financial planner, would bring different gifts to the table, if they were healthy. And I think with those 6s that, like in companies I've worked with where the CFO or the risk management team was run by a 6, that's a really good thing. Like I'm always like, tell me about your risk management system here and who's running it. You know what I mean? And so it's not that another type couldn't be a good risk manager. I'm just saying it's a natural for a 6. Exactly. It's a natural gig for a 6. All right, 7s.
Okay.
7s and money. What do you think? Enthusiasts.
Well, the guy that I interviewed, the Enneagram expert for years, he was a 7. So he talked about a few things. One is that he was an incredible manifester. And that was his language. So he was always talking about what he could manifest. And of course, he always had tons of ideas. Too many ideas, that's the downfall. But the plus side is multi-passionate entrepreneur. Lots of ideas. And he was terrified of his numbers and bookkeeping. And there was a time where he really wasn't willing to look at anything, his numbers at all. So was, like on a couch somewhere for a period of time, in a depression. Didn't know how to handle all of his sevenness energy. But he put it out there again, and he's an Enneagram expert and coach. And when he started getting really clear about different ways to bring his work to the world and got a team to support him, probably the online business manager, and to help corral and create marketing around it, and just a few courses instead of 10, and
Right.
that's something he's constantly struggling with, but he's a bright light. And yeah, when he gets excited about something, and there's always just a lot of action and idea going on.
Yeah, I think the thing about sevens and money, when I'm thinking about it, is they could be impulsive.
Yes.
They're impulse buyers.
Right.
They can, I'm always telling, how when they they take up snowboarding, and instead of saying, I'm going to rent a snowboard this year and just see how I like it, they go buy 3.
They'll buy the whole thing. Exactly.
The boots, the clothes, everything comes, right? Yeah. And then a month later, they're like, oh, I didn't really like snowboarding. And so it's in the garage, I think, at their best, they're able to, if they've evolved, they're able to delay gratification much better. I think they can, because they connected to one on the Enneagram, even though it's where they go in stress, it can also, if they can choose to go to the high side of one, if they want, and learn how to budget wisely and be conscientious about watching the numbers every month, making sure that without being neurotic about it, but just being, reasonably responsible. But I think, man, impulse, I have a 7th son.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. And they like really nice things.
Yeah, that's
it's not
true.
like,
yeah, they like high-end luxury things.
Oh
like
yeah.
The 3 to some days. But so that's the hardest thing for them, is that they want it all. And it's really hard for them to choose because they're all in accordance to their values on some level. They just have so many wants and desires. So that's a long journey and road to get to the healthier end of like having to pick. What are they going to let go of? What are they going to keep just for this phase? Every 6 months, they could reevaluate all of that, but they want it all. They do.
Yeah. The other thing I've noticed about 7s and money is, or just in general, but this applies to money, is when they're young or really older and lacking a lot of self-awareness, is that they're grandiose. So there's this kind of grandiosity around money, and I can get that because I'm gonna make a lot of money, and you're like, well, how? And it's like they're in their imagination thinking about a future of unlimited possibilities, and it's like, no, right now, how are you going to do that? And they're like, I'll do it.
It's a bit manic energy, and it is grandiose, and they like to take big leaps too, instead of like, what's the next incremental step? It's almost painful for them to do that. And yeah, they do think that they could create and manifest anything and everything. But they some of them can. It just takes many more steps to get there, and that might be a hard thing, but that's good. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about those 8 challengers. What do you think about 8 challengers and money?
Well, they're really into power and control. And there's a right way to do things and in a wrong way. I'm talking about the negatives. My father was an 8. So our biggest dynamic that was challenging for me was that he used money as power and control over. And so there was a lot of things I had to do, but then there wasn't clear communication about what the strings were that were attached, what the conditions were, what the agreements were. It was just used, and that's unhealthy, right? So that's the unhealthy version, is using money in a power over way to control. Healthy version. I mean, I'm not so much saying about money right now, because again, I'm waiting for the expert to write this book. Who's going to write this book?
I don't know. Maybe me. Maybe I've just written it on this program.
I'm not. I'm writing a second book already. So let's see. I mean, I was going to go into like they're leaders. They're good at creating things. They're good at running the show. But I'm not talking so much about money. So you tell me, like, I mean, eights have a way though. There are a lot of money teachers and money gurus that are eights. Yes. And they're very clear. This is how you invest. Don't ever have debt ever. But some of those eights, you know, they had debt and they got into their own challenging, very real life situation because of the housing market and had to file bankruptcy. And then they moved into now no debt ever, which, you know, I don't make blanket statements like that as a 4. I'm like, no, it depends on the time of life you're in, the phase, how you're using it. Do you have a plan, you know? Right. So you tell me, what are some positives around eights around money?
Well, I think I know at least two kinds of eights. These are members of my family. One is eights don't want to be controlled by other people. Uh-huh. So they are much more concerned. They are less concerned about controlling you than they are about you trying to control them. Okay. So I have an 8 I know, and the number one thing that she wanted when she left college was to have no debt. And it wasn't because it was responsible. She just didn't want a bank to own her or control her or to be at the mercy of some institution. So it was a lot more 8 themed, you know. But eights can be impulsive too. And they can, you know, lust is their passion, you know, which is about excess and needing immediate stimulation. So I've also seen eights make big decisions about money without a lot of thought, and that didn't end well, you know. So I think there's a continuum for every type, but that's on that 8 type, you know. Hey, when they're healthy, they realize that moderation, or however we want to put it, isn't a restraining order. You know, it's like you can have a healthy relationship with money. And that's true for 7s too, who hate limitations, right? Or imposed limitations. It's like, hey man, you know, this is not a restraining order. This is just about living, and I think you'll understand when I say this, mindfully. Just live mindfully in your relationship with money. And I think a lot of times, every type, if it's not, you know, and I encourage all of my listeners and students to have a mindfulness practice so that they can self-observe, you know, what is happening right now in my life, in my type, and why am I acting, thinking, and feeling this way in this moment, you know? So 8s, that's not a natural thing for them, you know, like there are certain types for whom meditation is really painful. Right. 8s can be one of them. Yes. But again, when they're healthy, they're very self-reliant, and they practice moderation, and they're content. They don't have this kind of Zorba the Greek gusto pouring out in every direction. They just have sort of a content sort of vibe about them, you know, which is really healthy.
So it's interesting. You're describing how I, as a 4, responded to my 8 father, which was, I will not be controlled. You know, I will absolutely not be controlled by you. And I'm not going to be fit in any box, like get all of that off of me. And I made so many decisions, both about my own work, but how I would do it, career, livelihood, but also the type of partner that I chose. I needed to marry a man that was like, I felt more just sitting by my side. We each would grow together, and I needed to make my own money. Mm-hmm. So, but what you're describing as the 8 is how I, as a 4, you know, reacted, rebelled, and had to, again, individuate and find my own way.
Yeah. Well, you know, 4s, particularly one kind of 4, can be, there's actually, there's a type of 4, the sexual 4 is.
Whenever I hear that, I'm like, I'm that.
That's right. Everyone wants to be their sexual
Well
variety
known
number.
whether what.
You know, it's 1-to-1. Okay, we'll go 1-to-1. So but the 1-to-1 type is more aggressive than an 8. People think 8's the most aggressive number in the Enneagram. I can just tell you, a 1-to-1-4 is very, very powerful, and very intense. And I'm not to say that that's what your subtype is,
Mhm.
but to let people know that, 4s aren't always wandering around the woods, saying, consider the lilies. It's like, they have a lot of energy and intensity, whether it's in relationships or with money or whatever. They're intense about pretty much everything. So I can see where that was a dynamic in a family growing up. Let's jump to 9s though, because
Okay.
we only have so much time. Peacemakers. I'm married to one.
Mhm.
I'm father to one. What do
Mhm.
you think? How do you think peacemakers relate to money?
One of my teaching assistants, a somatic experiencing therapist, and one of my teaching assistants for years is a 9. She always talked a lot about checking out and
Mm-hmm.
like just checking out of her body, checking out and not paying attention, and going to Netflix and going to these habits that were really unhealthy for
Right.
her. I'm fine with Netflix and all of that, and in moderation. So
Right.
that was one of the things that she would always talk about. I don't know how it was related to money for her though, but that was just
Right.
her patterns that she was always working with, like this tendency. And also to like, where we didn't know where she was, like, where are you, where are you in the room, like, please speak up, I want to hear from you, I want to hear your take, stand up more in your own sense of self, in your own self.
Right.
And so I don't, you tell me how those.
Yeah. Well, you just expressed a lot of what 4s would struggle with 9s. Would be the lack of intensity. And the fact that 9s, when they're not self-aware, tend to merge with big personalities like 4s.
Yeah.
And the 4 eventually would be like, you are khaki. You are too bland. I need more intensity. I need more authenticity from you. I don't need you to be a facsimile of me. I need you to be your own person, be authentic,
Yeah.
claim your ground,
Yeah.
be present here 100% when you're here. Don't be passive aggressive with me, because a lot of times that's where 9s go with their anger. You mentioned something that is the defense mechanism of 9s, which is called narcotization.
Yeah.
So they'll eat, they'll get on the couch, they'll binge, they'll watch all of Breaking Bad, in 3 days. They won't get off the couch,
Yeah.
they'll be, but they can also do it with exercise, or they can do it, which doesn't sound intuitive, but that's anything to get away from their desires and their anger and to maintain inner peace. And if that involves smoking a lot of pot or eating a sleeve of donuts, or, you know what I mean? Like, just checking out is a big piece of their life,
So around money, do they have spending moments to check out? And then
Yeah.
the fear famine experience, do they do that with how they
Yeah.
money, or what are the
They're,
patterns?
they're fascinating. Okay. So first of all, at their best, they'll maintain good, I'm always telling them they should be awake. So the problem is for the 9 is they're often sort of half asleep. And that's why they're sort of on the crown of the Enneagram, because in a way, all the numbers are asleep, right? There's a pattern among all the numbers where they're self-forgetting and asleep to their own lives, right? And we put the 9 at the top, and you almost imagine sort of the effect of the 9 cascading down both sides of that, kind of like we're asleep to our own lives, wake up, right? And so I think with the 9s, unfortunately, here's the downside. They can be very disorganized. They're distractible. Bills will pile up. They're great at denial. Money tends to leak different places. So I'm always saying, like 9s I'm always like, you have to please use auto pay on everything. You know, I'm always like, make sure that you have a system or a person in place that's watching or helping you watch your finances, because they just kind of don't want anything to enter their lives that would cause emotional, psychological, or somatic distress. They want everything to be calm, you know? And if the money thing isn't gonna make them calm, they'll just go eat a sleeve of donuts, or they'll watch Netflix, or they'll just as you said, check out, which is a term that we would use. So at their best, you know, I think they're the most spiritually advantaged number on the Enneagram. I think, so I'll tell you a 9 story, and then we've got to wrap up, even though I'd go forever on this conversation. My wife, who's a 9, saw a beautiful Johnny Was jacket, right? And it was like $700 or $800, right? Which, granted, is a lot of money for a jacket, right? But we could afford it, right? And she calls me on the phone, right, to ask me, you know, I saw this jacket, I'm wondering. And I said, well, first of all, you don't have to call me. Like, there's a 9 thing, right? She's like checking in, kind of like with the merging thing. And I'm like, you can make that decision on your own. You don't even need to check in with me. You just buy it if that's what you feel like you want. And I said that too, because she never buys stuff for herself.
Okay.
Like she just never does. Like it drives me crazy. And so she came home and she didn't have it. And I said, well, why didn't you get your jacket? She said, well, they love bargains. She said, I heard that it was going to be off at 20% in a couple of weeks. I said, honey, you're a 9 on the Enneagram. You will have forgotten all about this jacket by the day after tomorrow. In 3 weeks from now, when it goes on sale, you will not have it in your calendar to go back and look. So I got in the car. I drove to the mall. I bought the jacket at full price, and I brought it home. And I said, honey, the next time this happens, I hope you do that. You know, and I hope it wasn't sexist and overbearing or whatever. It was just a husband who's been married for 31 years saying, geez, do something nice for yourself, would you? Like, go buy the damn jacket. And 9s won't always do that. They will do it for someone else, but not for themselves.
Okay. All right, I have things to say. We gotta wrap it up. And so what we're realizing is that there's still so much nuance to pull out about how people manage their money, how people communicate about money, how they manage their money, or, you know, and then work and livelihood and careers, and, you know, it's all in there. So no one has written that book yet.
You know, you're right. And so now maybe I need to think about it for my next book, even though it's not my wheelhouse, but it sounds like just something I'd have fun researching. I'm talking to Bari Tessler. She is the author of the Art of, The Art of Money. Don't worry, we'll edit this. I'm talking to Bari Tessler, the author of The Art of Money, who integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps on her year-long money school. She has the podcast, The Art of Money podcast. Is that correct?
Yep.
Right. And her website, baritessler.com, BARITESSLER.com. And she's at Bari Tessler. Her handle is that, I guess, across all of your socials. And this has been a fascinating conversation.
It has. We could have kept going though. There's a lot more in all.
Oh my gosh, 2 4s.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's have you back on. This may be a 2-part episode, but let's have you back on, and let's maybe dig even a little deeper the next time. This was a wonderful sort of 50,000-foot pass on types and money, and thank you for your work.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
And to all of our listeners, remember the great words of the wonderful Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Until next time.